Regardless of whether you are a new player or a seasoned veteran, there is always the opportunity to learn about how to improve at tabletop role-playing. G'day mates and fellow adventurers, my name is Mordecai. One of the best aspects to playing tabletop role-playing games is the premise of overcoming challenges alongside a group of fellow players. To be able to confront antagonists in a fictional world full of mystery, intrigue, and danger is an underappreciated form of escapism, and the premise often invites new players into the genre. Whether they are inspired by live-streamed games, or are undertaking TTRPGs of their own initiative, the stories that can unfold within the campaigns can bring people together when they give it a whirl. But what no one wants to see is an unfair knock against themselves and their fellow players as a result of burpees sprung by a problem galah, especially when that galah is just as much of a new player as everyone else at the table. And being a new player means being able to get into good practices with tabletop role-playing early. Practices such as respect for your fellow players, appreciating the effort that goes into every game, and learning how to make sure everyone at the table is having fun above all else. Before we get started with the story for the video, if I get to 1000 subs before the end of 2023, I have plans to cover an RPG story which predates the subreddit and contains one of the most infamous characters in all of tabletop role-playing game history. Let's delve into the often terrifying world of r/RPGHorrorStories. Today's narrative is titled XDM Tries to Ruin the Game, Gets Booted from the Group, and is written by user Lord of Fury. This is a story that started almost a year ago and has reached its conclusion yesterday. Me and a group of 6 other friends from high school decided to start playing D&D, and to do so, we bought the 5e Essentials kit. We were all very excited, we discussed some of our backstories with each other, and some of us even had characters that were siblings with each other. For me, I created Arvani Fendiril III, an elf dexterity-based fighter with a focus on the longbow. His backstory was that he was a descendant of the famous Fendiril family, and as such was trained since childhood to become a great warrior of immense skill with all manner of fighting. The party had the following composition: the elf fighter played by yours truly, a human paladin, a human wizard, an elf rogue played by my brother, a tiefling cleric, and a half-elf barbarian. This last character will be important later. And one member of the group accepted being the DM. He seemed like a perfect fit at first glance. He acted very chill around everyone and is a very organised person. We thought he would be very fair and know the rules very well, and so he agreed to be the DM. Let's call this guy Mars. We were going to play the Dragon of Icespire Peak introductory adventure that comes with the Essentials kit. A very simple series of adventures with one objective: killing the Dragon of Icespire Peak. Pretty cool. The first sessions ran smoothly, we were learning the game and Mars was running it without major issues, and everyone was having tons of fun. The problem started when we were having class. The group had already finished the tasks given, and so we just started chatting about D&D and some of the Forgotten Realms lore. I said that, according to the lore, white dragons are actually the weakest of the chromatics, and reds are usually the strongest. Then, as if from nowhere, Mars snapped. He got mad at me for saying it, and started diminishing my character's backstory, and ironically asking if I was mad because the Dragon of Icespire Peak wasn't as strong as the dragon my character's father killed. For context, my character's father died fighting a red dragon. Yes, died. Not killed. Everyone noticed he was getting mad at me for no valid reason, but we ignored it and continued being excited for the game. The breaking point came when we were about to level up to level 3 and pick our subclasses. For some reason, he held us at level 2 for a very long time, and so we had time to think what subclasses we wanted. I myself wanted Battlemaster, since it was fitting with my character's backstory, personality, and playstyle. When I announced it to him though, he said that I couldn't pick it because it was not in the Essentials Kit rulebook. Hang on a moment, let me double check. Oh yeah, the Battlemaster is in the Player's Handbook for 5th edition. I see how this is going. I asked him how this made any sense, since Paladin, and Paladin's subclass of choice, Oath of Vengeance as an extension, and Tiefling are two things not present in the Essentials Kit rulebook, and that if he allowed other players to pick those things, he should allow me to pick Battlemaster. I also stated that my other subclass options were not very good or very suitable for me. Champion was terrible as a whole, especially before level 7, and Eldritch Knight, whilst a solid subclass on its own right, was simply not very compatible for my build, and that I wouldn't have a lot of fun playing an underpowered character with abilities I wouldn't end up using a lot. Mars became furious, and started almost shouting at me for wanting to play Battlemaster. The rogue tried helping my argument, but Mars just ignored him as well. After calming down, he called me in private and asked me to show him what Battlemaster gained. Showing him some maneuvers, all excited that maybe he changed his mind, Mars started laughing out loud whilst reading them, and says that Battlemaster is busted. He then says he would allow it, but only if nerfed. I would only have half the total superiority dice that the class usually gains at level 3. In response, I said I would rather not be a Battlemaster then, and begrudgingly chose Eldritch Knight, since I found it better than a capped Battlemaster and Champion. During the rest of the session, the last one before leveling up to 3, since we were using Milestone, cue him ironically calling my character Arvarni the Battlemaster during the rest of that session. After that, I honestly lost interest, and with other stuff happening in my life, I politely said to Mars that I wanted to leave the game. He obviously didn't accept it well, shouted at me, but for that time, I simply left the game and let him do with Arvarni what he wished. Some months later, I was in a very bad spot in my life, losing contact with my friends that still played the game, Rogue, Paladin, etc., and I needed to keep our friendship alive. I contacted Mars, asking him if I could rejoin the game, and he was surprisingly positive with my return. He said it wasn't going very well, and that Cleric had quit it as well. I asked Cleric if he wanted to get back too, and he accepted. The group was all reunited again. I created my new character, Melanor Indoril, a College of Law bard. The first session was already pretty bad. Rogue made a character joke, and both I and Cleric laughed out loud, since it was really funny and we thought it was in character. Mars, however, got pissed off at us, and said we would have disadvantage for the rest of the session, which didn't happen since I said I would just leave if that came to fruition. Other sessions came, and in almost every one of those, he went berserk with someone for some reason. Mars had also changed a bunch of rules for no apparent reason, some of which directly nerfed some characters. Wizard, for example, had a very limited spell list, due to Mars opting to only use the spells presented in the Essentials Kit rulebook. One of the few great spells he had access to was Haste. For some reason, Mars made a change in the rules that a turn is 6 seconds, instead of an entire round being 6 seconds. Wizard became upset that Haste would only last for 10 turns instead of 10 rounds, as it is in vanilla. Mars, as you probably predicted, snapped at him. Mars also extended the campaign with a lot of stuff, more than doubling its length, but didn't increase the level cap. He also didn't reward us in almost any other way, be it with loot or even recognition from NPCs. We felt like we were running in circles, and that all our characters did resulted in absolutely nothing. The only character who had any focus at all was Barbarian. Let me clarify, Barbarian actually got all of the focus. The story revolved around Barbarian's backstory to some extent. Me and the other players noticed that, but didn't say anything about it to Mars. The other players in private asked me if I would want to DM after Mars' campaign was finished, and I accepted, but asked them not to tell Mars too early, because by that point, we were already very aware that he is extremely prone to rage for the most minor of reasons. I say Mars' campaign instead of Dragon of Icespire Peak, since it became almost a completely separate thing. In a sense, I'm not sure it was entirely positive. The only real similarity was that the dragon was still there. Nearing his campaign's end, Paladin asked him if he would be okay with me DMing after we killed the dragon, and Mars surprisingly seemed chill about it. But oh boy, was that just not the case. After killing the dragon, we were gearing up for my campaign, an epic fantasy campaign about a war against a devil invasion in Faerun, with everyone creating new characters with the exception of the rogue and the wizard, who wanted to keep their current characters. Mars had some cards up his sleeve still though. He said he wanted to do a post-game to his campaign, which would wind up being basically a second entire campaign. No one was really excited for that. But I personally tried to make the best of it, since by that time I still considered him my friend, and so wanted him to finish his story as that seemed appropriate. Although, looking back, I think I may have been giving Mars way too much credit. You see, Melanor, my bard character, died during the dragon fight, and for this post-game, he wanted me to play as an NPC he created. At the time I said, why not? He sent me several audio files explaining his backstory, and I said I would hear them later, since I was busy at that time. Since I couldn't listen to the audios but could still read just fine, I sent him some unrelated images about Messi, a football player we both liked, and I listened to the audio files the very next day. The timing wasn't great, I admit, but I didn't intend to ignore his audios or anything. Unfortunately, he again became very hostile to me for a prolonged period of time. Mars did everything in his power to not step down as DM in any way possible, be it making his post-game, creating one-shots that he said he could extend to full-blown campaigns, etc. The other players, though, wanted to play my campaign, and had already made their characters, and were working on their backstories, etc. Anytime any of them mentioned anything related to my campaign, or their new characters to him, he would get furious. Anyway, time goes by and his post-game ends up not happening, and due to scheduling problems, we didn't have sessions for about 3 months. During that time, I invited Mars to be a player in my campaign, which was my biggest mistake. And he, for the better part of a month, said he was unsure about joining my campaign. After some time, he accepted my invite into my campaign, and so I asked about his character. What would he be? What would be his backstory? So I could better include him in the world. He ignored me and always sent images of Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo when I asked him, as a sort of childish vengeance, with him straight up saying, "Now it's my turn." I even expressed my concern with Paladin, now playing as a druid, about Mars, but he assured me that Mars would play well and nice. The day came, and the campaign started. We started in a New Year festival held in Baldur's Gate, celebrating the event that a hero 3,000 years ago defeated a great evil, and that it marked Year Zero. The festival was to celebrate life and heroism, a light-hearted fair with lots of events and games. There was one twist though. Baldur's Gate was being controlled from behind the curtains by a devilish cult, which connected to the wizard's character and paladins and clerics' old characters as well. During this festival, the party is formed and its new composition is the paladin becoming a druid, the rogue retaining the character, the wizard retaining their character, the cleric becoming a paladin, the barbarian swapping out to a fighter, and Mars being introduced as a warlock. The problem is, Mars' character was a textbook example of an edgelord. He was standing in a corner in a tavern. He threatened people for no valid reason. He described his character as cold and pale. And worst of all, he used "this is what my character would do" as an excuse for not participating in almost any aspect of the game. Be it combat, interactions, not relaying information only he understood to the other players, hearing something in a language only he spoke, etc, etc. Mars also insulted other players' characters, such as saying that a druid that uses a mecha as wild shape isn't flavouring, even though we didn't alter the stats in the slightest, calling Fighter's character of fake barbarian, in the sense that barbarian was the only character he cared about in his own campaign. And when the other player said his character was an edgelord jerk, he got mad at them. The worst part though came in the second session. He did everything within his capability to make everyone, especially me, feel bad. He would act disinterested on purpose, not even acting like he was paying any sort of attention in any moment of it. There was a point in an encounter with a bone devil that he asked in the middle of the battle, with the most disinterested voice possible, "What are we facing again?" I admit, as a new DM, there are a lot of things I need to improve, but I am in earnest trying, and Mars, as a former DM himself, should have known how much work is necessary for DMing, especially someone who was just learning how to do it. He just made me feel like a bumbling fool at every turn, and made it very clear that he was completely hating it, and that, in his opinion, I was completely incompetent. And I'm not butt mad for being criticized or anything like that. I actually enjoy constructive criticism, and I myself take notes after the sessions end on things that I should have improved. I am sad not because he was criticizing me, but because he was being a complete jerk whilst doing so. Of course, no one has the obligation of liking the session, or even liking me personally, but I ask for respect at least. I truly was having a bad time, because always, when I was describing something or starting combat, I would look at the players' faces, and they all looked back at me, paying attention and apparently enjoying themselves, or at least pretending they were. Mars explicitly wanted to send a message, and we noticed it. Everyone was mad at him by the end of the session, and now, we decided simply to boot him out of the game. He simply can't control his emotions enough. His anger issues were slowly but surely killing the game and our enjoyment. After sending him the message saying that it would be better for everyone for him not to play, he accepted, but tried to guilt trip me in the end. I honestly didn't care anymore at that point. I don't consider Mars my friend anymore, because friends don't do that. We are all excited to play the rest of the campaign together now. I sincerely hope for the best. And that's where the story ends. It is extremely unfortunate that Mars behaves like a textbook example of a problem galah, between bullying their fellow players through nerfing their characters and making changes to rules that are to the detriment of the party, not to mention flying into temper tantrums for the pettiest of reasons. Which culminates in making the entire group of players besides Mars miserable at the table. And the feeling that Mars is of the opinion that he somehow needs to win against his party, going so far as to use the "it's what my character would do," insulting other players in a manner which was neither endearing nor charming. And we can't forget that they were obsessed with the idea of continuing to be the DM. Part of what being a DM is about is providing a fair and reasonable challenge for the party to overcome. The challenge is not supposed to be, "how do I beat my fellow party members?" or "how do I beat the party?" but rather, "how do I provide a fun experience that also poses adequate obstacles to the party?" If providing a fun experience for the party overall means that you have to boot out the one player whose ego is of a size comparable to a planet, then that's what needs to be done. After all, we play TTRPGs to escape from out-of-game drama, not to get involved with even more of it. TTRPGs are inherently cooperative experiences, so it is always bad when someone fails to understand that in such a manner. And now we have to talk about the prospect of second chances. It may seem weird or counterintuitive for a person to return to a game ran by a problem galah. Respectfully, I disagree with that for two reasons. Firstly, second chances allow other people to make amends, to correct mistakes, and to fix issues. The second reason is that, quite often, problems cannot easily be solved unless the people involved realize that issues are being caused. which does mean that if the group or someone watching wants to get the issues resolved, a second chance would have to be given, after having a sit down with the problem player and having a discussion about what they did wrong with them, and what they can do in the future to avoid creating more issues. In other words, take some life lessons away from tabletop role-playing. Thank you for watching the video. If you like my content and want to see more or wish to support the channel, please hit the subscribe button and maybe leave the video a like. It's free to do, and every bit of support is highly appreciated. Also, if you wish to leave a comment and can't think of anything to write, let me know you've reached the end of the video by commenting. Second chances can be fantastic. Again, thank you for watching, and I shall see you all next time.